There's always something a little poignant about the end of something. Maybe that's why people get drunk on New Year's Eve, to forget it. It's sad to think that a whole year is over. But if you think New Year's is depressing, how would you feel if you thought that all life on this planet was ending soon? 3 million years of human history erased forever. Sad, isn't it? Chris Hayes thinks so. Chris Hayes is what every man would be if feminists ever achieved absolute power in this country. Apologetic, bespectacled, and deeply, deeply concerned about global warming and the patriarchal systems that cause it. On Friday, Hayes hosted a town hall event on MSNBC with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-cortez. It was designed to promote her Green New Deal. This apparently seemed like a wise idea to executives over at NBC. The very same news outlet that spent 2 years lying to you about Russia brings you a 29-year-old former bartender to teach you about science. Hayes framed the terms at the outset of the show. Unless you do exactly what Dr. Ocasio-cortez says, the entire human race has only 12 years to live.
What we have to do to avoid the most catastrophic effects of climate change is to cut emissions in half in 12 years. 12 years. That's the project we've been tasked with by the Earth. Has come a bold new policy proposal that might be the most controversial thing in American politics at the moment. You've probably heard about it. It's called the Green New Deal. Some people call it a socialist monster. Some people call it our only hope for survival here in the way of life that we hold dear.
It looks like Ellen, kind of a fusion show. But did you hear what he said? Our only hope for survival. Holy smokes, that is terrifying. Help us, Chris Hayes. Where is this life raft, this humanity-saving antidote that alone can prevent the death of our children? Well, the good news is that Alexandria Ocasio-cortez has the cure for human extinction. All we have to do is obey her and be very, very good people.
In my framework, in my belief, that we not just have a wealthy society, but that we have a moral society.
Wait a second, you may be wondering. How does a member of Congress who hasn't yet turned 30, someone who's never even raised children, get the right to lecture me about morality? Well, that's the difference between you and Alexandria Ocasio-cortez. She is a highly decent person. Listen to her explain how she doesn't resort to ad hominem attacks, unlike her enemies, who, by the way, are xenophobic white supremacists.
We're actually talking about something substantive. We're not calling anyone names. People say Tea Party of the left, and I find this phrase very interesting, this phrasing very interesting, because the grounding of the Tea Party was xenophobia, the underpinnings of white supremacy.
Yeah, stop with the name calling, you racist white supremacist xenophobe. So it's official. Alexandria Ocasio-cortez is a moron and nasty and more self-righteous than any televangelist who ever preached a sermon on cable access. She's not impressive. She's awful. So how did she get so famous? Why do people like her? Well, if we're being honest, we got to say it's because not everything she says is wrong. Listen to this clip. It's from the same town hall. Ocasio-cortez takes a break from her idiotic climate theology to offer what turns out to be a fairly insightful critique of the American economy.
We have runaway income inequality. We are at one of our most unequal points, economically speaking, in American history. We are dealing with a crisis of how our economy is even made up. Our economy is increasingly financialized, which means we are making profits off of interest, off of leasing your phone, off of doing all of these things, but we aren't producing and we aren't innovating in the way that we need to as an economy.
Okay, you hate to admit it, given the source, but try to ignore the way she said it. Maybe just print it out and read it. A lot of it's basically true. Neither party wants to talk about this. The Republicans are in fetal position. They just don't want to be unpopular anymore. They'll do anything not to be unpopular. The Democrats want what they've always wanted, total and complete control over you and this country. Neither party will say that our economy, at its core, is badly distorted. Any economy based on interest payments isn't really an economy, it's a scam. Healthy countries innovate. They make things. They don't treat people like interchangeable widgets. They don't worship finance. In a healthy country, bankers aren't heroes. Private equity is not the highest paid profession. Nobody brags about working at a hedge fund. In America right now, we have the opposite, unfortunately. And that's why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has a constituency. Not because she's impressive, she's not, but because she's one of the very few people who will say the obvious about growing corporate tyranny in this country. That doesn't mean she's right about anything else. Taking power from the banks and giving it to Ocasio-Cortez, as she proposes, would not solve our problems. It'll just put an even dumber person in charge. But she's right about the financialization part.
All right, so this was one of the best things I read this week. It was from a Wall Street Journal editorial on the Democrats and the Green New Deal. Quote, "Isn't democracy great? Only in Congress could a political party introduce legislation with great media fanfare, then vote against it and blame the other side for cynicism." The Senate Democrats voting present on the Green New Deal is this week's Loony Left update. Okay. It makes us smile. The Loony Left thing there. All right, so this is just so nuts. They're so embarrassed by their own thing that is literally now the centerpiece of some of their presidential candidates' campaigns. They want to tell their activists that this is all their focus, and then they won't even back it in Congress.
I thought we only had 12 years to live, so we should be voting on it every day, right? I mean, 0 votes is how much the new Green Deal got in the U.S. Senate, 57 to nothing, and the Democrats that weren't quite sure voted present. But again, I thought according to AOC, we only have 12 years left. We got to get voting on this right now. I guess socialism isn't as popular as you may think it is.
It's just nuts, isn't it?
It is, and I think the worst argument for it was, oh, well, we were just introducing it so that it would spark debate, so that it would spur conversation leading up to the election. Well, that's not what I want my lawmakers to be doing. I don't want them to be introducing bills, but, oh, just kidding, we just did it to talk about it, right? I mean, what else are we paying them for? Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. And the thing, and we talk about AOC, I mean, she's basically become the leader of the party. I mean, she was on the cover now of Time magazine. You know, this is just something and there seems to be nothing they can do about it.
Well, that's perfectly fine. I mean, in some ways it was predictable. She's the anti-Trump. I mean, she's constantly wrong but never in doubt, and she has radical policies that would undo every piece of success that the Trump administration has accomplished and achieved in the last 2 years. In some ways, some people say, oh, she's a good thing for Republicans. I get that argument. But in other ways, we have to be brutally honest and say that these ideas are really dangerous.
Yeah,
and I mean, there's nothing funny about a $100 trillion takeover of the American economy. There's nothing funny about saying, America's not an exceptional country. There's nothing funny about that. And so, yes, it's easy to poke fun at her, and we should. We're both in our 20s, and so I guess we're within a couple of years of each other, so something tells me I'm going to be going up against AOC in the intellectual debate for many, many years now. And it's quite scary, to be perfectly honest with you. These ideas should be taken with unbelievable seriousness.
I mean, it isn't. I mean, that is the center of the gravity of the party
at this moment. And I think one of my biggest issues with this whole conversation is that it's yet again something that's always reduced to a soundbite. It's oversimplified when so much of her and what she's talking about and what everyone's talking about, that it's wrong. And how is it that almost 70% of people polled say that they will not spend $10 to combat climate change, and yet this Green New Deal is supposed to cost trillions? There's a disconnect between the budget and people's wallets and kitchen table issues they care about with kind of equating it to caring about a larger picture. And I think, so some more examples. Everyone talks about the Paris Climate Accord and drawing out. Well, the efficacy has been shown to be literally nil. So if people really cared about these issues, wouldn't it be incumbent upon those lawmakers to then create legislation that then backs up what they believe,
That's such a smart point, because they don't really. I mean, they just want to make a point. They want us to look like they really care about. That's what it seems to be
It's also about power and control, and
what the policies are exactly.
Without a doubt, yeah. And what I'm stunned though, Steve, I'm really surprised. Recently Adam Schiff sent out a tweet defending her, saying, oh, if you underestimate her, it's going to be to your demise. He said, what point is their party leadership going to take a stand against her? And that really shows that the center of gravity has gone way away from what mainstream Democrats used to stand for. And I would like to think that, Trump didn't radicalize them, he revealed them. I mean, I think this has always been within their ranks. You cannot get this radical this quickly. It's always been brewing within them. And now they just believe that whatever the president says, they must say the opposite.
But it's also, there's a clarity there, which is in a way very helpful for framing the debate, because
there was a time when AOC was described as a populist, a bit aligned with Bernie Sanders.
Sure.
But populism, and we talk about this all the time, it's about giving power to the people.
Yes.
About decentralizing power. This is all about them
not power
grabbing the power.
plutocrats.
That's why the socialist analogy with Venezuela, even though, of course, you could say it's extreme, it's exactly right.
Well, that goes back to the hypocrisy that underlays everything, where the answer to every kind of ill is government overreach and ownership, and yet out of their mouths comes, we're taking power back.
Taking power for them away from you. All right. Great discussion.